The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the latest edition of the Health and Fitness Show. I am Suliman Rafiq, your host for today's show, and we are broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM today on the 17th of October 2019, reaching listeners in Luton and surrounding areas on 105.1 FM. As always, you can join us via the Inspire FM website, as well as if you prefer to watch, as well as listen to us, you can view us via Facebook. All you have to do is go to the Inspire FM Facebook page and click on our live link. Having your interaction on the show makes all the difference, so get involved by text or WhatsApp on 0777 948 1822. That's 0777 948 1822. Or you can call the studio on 01582 481822. Thanks to listeners for the amazing interaction we had on my last show in regards to speech and language therapy. I hope you're able to add to today's show also. Today is a special show and has been sponsored by Tropica and will be on the topic of postnatal care. If you haven't heard the term postnatal care, this is the important period from childbirth to around 40 days. And as always, we remind our listeners that information given in today's show is general only, and you should always speak to your GP for any medical advice. Now, many listeners will have thoughts on this and insight on today's topic, so we'd love to hear from you. It's 0777 948 1822. We will be going for the Adhan break in about 5 minutes, but before that, I would like to ask my guests to introduce themselves and their connection to today's topic. So if I may.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Brother Suliman, for inviting me and my friend here. My name is Hannah Abdullah. And I'm one of the women who have gone through the postnatal care according to the Malay culture and rituals.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And if I could ask you to introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nora. I've been a massage therapist for 30 years. And I practice mostly in Malaysia, and I've also practiced in UK before for a few years in postnatal care and women's well-being in general.
Excellent, and we're so lucky to have you both here and giving insight into the Malaysian way of postnatal care. I think it's going to be a really interesting insight from a different culture in terms of what works well, and so inshallah, hopefully, as I said, this will be of interest to our listeners. I know, alhamdulillah, we have a lot of listeners that have engaged with us over the week. So once again, I'd just like to encourage that on 0777 948 1822. So can you just talk a little bit more, just for a few moments, in relation to why this postnatal period is important?
Well, it's during confinement period in Malaysia. We believe that the woman should be pampered through the various procedures, like she has to go through herbal bath and wet and dry sauna and hot stone treatment, massage and belly binding. Okay, this will help to make her body go back to the original form, and she is not to be exposed to any heavy housework And usually it is a very wholesome treatment where all the family takes part in carrying her. See the husbands, the sisters or brothers, and the mothers, and help to care for her and the baby as well. She must be real rested to enable her to give her best in caring for the baby.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like music to the ears of lots of the sisters, at least, in terms of the approach that is taken.
Yes.
And it sounds quite interesting. We're going to explore in more detail after the break exactly what some of those processes are, and I'm hoping to get more details on that, given your wealth of experience in this area as well. So in terms of I was looking at some of the statistics around Malaysia, and actually there seem to be better statistics in relation to postnatal depression as well, and this might be some of the reasoning behind that, perhaps. Do you see any link in the experiences you've had with that?
I would agree to that, but even though I haven't seen the statistics, but looking back at how I was taken care of by my mother, during confinement, so and now I can appreciate the ritual that we went through. So that was really needed for the women.
Sure.
You'll feel energized, rejuvenated, and you feel happy because there's someone to help you. Yeah,
absolutely.
And then a happy mom is definitely, is and can help the child to grow happy as well. So that everybody is, benefiting from, the postnatal care, even though it's done to the mom, but the whole family.
The whole family benefits from that period.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to come on to touch on what exactly we mean when we talk about containment, as you call it. Confinement, sorry, in terms of that period and the importance of that, and some of the ways in which that period can be improved and what can be done as well. So really, as I say, we're really, really grateful to have you here and giving your insight from the Malaysian perspective around this really important period of time. And so inshallah we will just be going to the Adhan break, but I ask listeners to please do stay with us. We will be looking at this topic in much more detail, and you can get involved by text or WhatsApp on 0777 948 1822 or call the studio on 01582 481822. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show. I'm your host for this evening, Suliman Rafiq, and we are broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM today on the 17th of October 2019, reaching listeners in Luton and surrounding areas on 105.1 FM. Today's special show has been sponsored by Tropica and will be on the topic of postnatal care. For clarity, postnatal is the important period after childbirth. As always, we remind listeners that any health advice given is general only, and you should always speak to your GP for medical advice. So just before the break there, I asked the sisters just to introduce themselves. For anyone that may have missed the introduction, I'll just ask them to quickly introduce themselves again.
Yeah, I'm Hannah. Yeah, I'm one of the women who have gone through the Malay postnatal care, and I would like to share my experience with the listeners out there.
That's great. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
I'm Nora. I'm the massage therapist with 30 years of experience in postnatal and well-being of the women.
Great. And just with the experience, 30 years of experience you've had there working in this area specifically, one of the questions we've had is just in relation to what exactly do we mean when we're talking about postnatal depression specifically?
Basically, when a woman goes through pregnancy, is already traumatic experience for her. I mean, having to carry the baby for 9 months definitely is going to affect her, her spine, her body, the whole body as a whole, and during delivery of the baby, she has to go through labor pain. So all this experience after giving birth, she will feel the postnatal effects of this, and definitely she needs an appropriate care. Well, in Malaysia, we believe it would have to be around 40 days, 40 to 44 days. Appropriate care, meaning she must have a conducive environment, having a family support. She must have a good sleep so that she's able to produce, because during her sleep, the body is well rested, and she's able to produce the production of milk is more as compared to when she has less sleep. And she's able to feed the baby better, and at the same time, all this not having enough appropriate care will lead to depression. So when you say postnatal depression, these are the feelings that she has, negative feelings after giving birth and not having the proper care that she deserves to have.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there in terms of the importance of rest after a lady has given birth.
Yes.
And often, when we have big families, extended families, and people are very keen to come and visit the mother and the baby, and are keen even to come to the hospital or to come to the house very soon after, and things like that. But you're talking a lot here about the importance of rest and the impact that has.
Yes.
Yeah. And can you just touch a little bit on, because it's a term I haven't heard before in relation to confinement, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. This is practiced in Malaysia. Can you please explain it in detail for us?
Yes. I've been a confinement lady during this 30 years of being a massage therapist. A confinement lady takes care of the baby. I mean, in fact, she has to live in with the new mom. Okay. At nights, she usually sleeps with the baby, and only give the baby to the mother when she needs feeding. But if the mother is not able to feed the baby because of problems with maybe the nipple breaks because of the constant feeding, the baby may need to have a baby formula. Then it will be taken care of by the confinement lady. Sometimes any members of the family will do that. So the mother will have a good sleep. Yeah, there's no disturbance from the baby wanting milk, and if she can feed the baby, she feeds the baby. But if she can't, we'll let her rest, have a full rest. And on top of that, my daily routine is to come to the house, boil water, herbal bath, make a herbal bath for her. I bathe her. If she's not comfortable having someone to bathe, she'll bathe herself. And the baby will be bathed by the confinement lady, so she doesn't have to do such things. And then after that, we go through the other procedures, like we have the wet sauna. We put we boil herbs in the water, and will be like a steaming session. It's the how do you call, the steam will warm up the baby, her body, and it stimulates the flow of the breast milk. At the same time, she will have this she will feel very, very, as she said, refreshed and rejuvenated by the hot steam engulfing her body. And this is done by her wrapping up her body with a cloth, and the steam coming from the underneath the chair. She's fully covered. That is one of the essential treatment that she has to go through.
Brother Suliman, if I can add, confinement means that the woman after birth has to stay at home. She's not supposed to go out,
Right.
unless it is very necessary. So in Malaysia, we practice that for about up to 40 days or even longer. So, and she's not supposed to be exposed to the cold or wet weather, the rain, and she's supposed to keep warm all the time. So this will help her to recover.
Yes.
You know, having gone through labor is really, like the word says, labor is a hard work, isn't it?
Yeah.
So she needs to take care of herself, and so she needs to take care of herself by confining herself in the house, being taken care of by family members or a confinement lady if they can afford to.
Yeah.
And so that she return back to her healthy self.
Normal form, yeah.
Absolutely. And this is really interesting because, you know, in kind of, you know, recent times, unfortunately, there's a lot of pressure on women to, you know, as soon as they've had their baby, then just to, you know, carry on, as it were.
Yes.
But I think you're giving an insight into a way that's, as you said, much more beneficial for the whole family in the long run, in terms of that important period for 40 to 44 days of the confinement period. And what's your experience of it then when you had the experience of this? How did you find it?
When I had my first baby, it was overseas, so I did not have this opportunity to go through the Malay postnatal care. But for my consequent children, I have 5, and my second, third, fourth, and fifth, I went through this procedure, and it was it was an amazing experience, as a whole, and. As a whole, the aim was for you to get healthy again, isn't it? As normal. So it's achieved all through this massage, especially with the massage that we go through. It really helps your body to, to become rejuvenated, energized. You know, you feel healthy again. You know.
And that's really interesting because then you've experienced both, haven't you? You haven't just, you know, so you've seen the difference between your first and then your other 4 children in terms of, and you, so then you're giving an insight into the difference that was experienced that way around. So even with subsequent, it's not just with the first child that this is recommended, it's recommended for subsequent children as well.
That's right.
Even, Okay. And is it your experience that, with your experience, is that women do always prefer to come back and to do the confinement again with the tradition, or do they some prefer not to, or how does that work?
Well, they would prefer to have to be treated.
I would say they are looking forward.
Looking forward to that period.
Because we women, we are always doing work at home. I mean, it's always something to do.
Yeah.
So it's like a break from the normal routine.
Sure.
And she has to have a me day, you know. Me time. To rectify whatever is being, you know, going through a very I can say it's an ordeal going through the labor pain.
No, it sounds really amazing for that period. The amount, and like you say, is very important. I think we've got used to, often in England as well, is very soon after a lady is given birth, they'll be discharged and sent home as well, and there isn't any necessarily any thorough kind of follow on from that specifically. I'm just conscious we
will be surprised to see them on the street after a week of having given birth, and we said in our culture this is not allowed. I mean, you have to be indoors, keep warm.
Especially at the moment, it's very cold weather.
Yes, right.
And they have to be appropriately clothed. I mean, they have to wear appropriate dress. They have to cover, as if they are in winter season, because we believe that if the body is exposed to the air outside, it will causes negative impact on the body. And it's going to, it is very, very important to really take care to follow strictly to the procedures, because it's going to take her a long way through her life. Because if she doesn't follow strictly, there will be she will have some issues on the health later on, health issues later on.
And I think what we would like to come on to talk about as well is that period and the impact that it has on the child as well, as a mother as well. We'd like to come on to talk about that. We are fast approaching our advert break, so I'd just like to encourage listeners, please do stay with us. We'll be talking about this really fascinating cultural Malaysian way of dealing with the postnatal period and the really impactful, beneficial impact that this has not only on mums but on the whole family. I'd like to remind listeners that you can get involved, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this from 0777 948 1822. That number again, 0777 948 1822. We've had a few messages in. I'd love to hear more of your thoughts. Please do stay with us, and we'll be joining Hannah and Nora after the short commercial break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all our listeners and viewers. Welcome back to Health and Fitness Show. I'm your host Fahad Matin for this evening, and we are talking about awareness of Rett syndrome with our very, very nice guest, and he's the guy who's literally explaining me about every single thing about this particular syndrome, and he's none other than Robert Admick. This program is broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM on 10th of October 2019, and casting its positive vibes to our lovely people in Luton and all the surrounding areas of Luton. Listening all the way across Dunstable, Harpenden, Bedford, to going on the south side, or going on the east side and west side. And definitely, if you are listening us through Inspire FM webpage or web app, or even through our Facebook page live link, if you're viewing us, good evening and welcome back. So before we went on break, we were talking about this Rett syndrome in very detail, and I must say Robert was very, very nice, very kind enough to give us some basic details and some in-depth knowledge of this particular syndrome. And just to recapture from my brain, so at least it settled in my brain before I go to my guest, that Rett syndrome is a very rare genetic mutation syndrome, which happens in mostly happens in girls, but boys do get affected, and it is something which is genetically based, and it's not necessarily need to happen to every single one. So it's like one hit and miss kind of thing, and you need to have certain genetic markers to have this, and even then it's not necessary that every single child have. It has a wide spectrum, like any other syndromes, that people from different spectrums shows different sections, and definitely it is been diagnosed, but it's not easy to diagnose, and sometimes people do get misdiagnosed. So let me introduce and let me welcome our guest back into the show and ask him if I'm right. So, Rob, firstly, repronounce your surname, because I definitely...
No, it's Adamek.
Adamek. Yes, I think so. I've pronounced your name wrong.
I don't make it easy. It's a Polish surname. So.
You do not have a Polish accent, but...
I don't. I think, what am I? Second generation.
Okay.
I have to think about that for a second. I'm just get slapped from my grandma, don't worry.
Right. Okay, in terms of Rett syndromes, the things which I've just repeat, how far I am from the original lines?
Yeah, you're bang on.
Yeah.
But you're bang on. That's exactly it.
I spoke to you on Monday, right?
You did, yeah.
So up till Monday, this Monday passed, I did not know about this syndrome. In fact, I just spoke to a couple of my GP friends, and they were literally looking at me like I'm talking something different.
Uh-huh.
So I must say this is a very unique and very not very publicized or very well-known syndrome.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think you probably come across quite a few of these, unless a celebrity child or somebody famous has got a child with this illness. It probably won't ever come to prominence because it will skip on by. There's hundreds and hundreds. We're part of a rare disease network across the UK, and I mean, like I said before, ours is the second most common cause of severe disability. Can you imagine some of the other ones that are even further down the list? And the importance of that is a lot of those sometimes are mistaken. So we've had people diagnosed with Rett syndrome, and it ends up being something like Angelman syndrome, which I won't throw into the bag. I'm not doing their piece. Theirs is just as complicated in its own way. So to do them justice, maybe one day you'll find someone from them.
And that's a mutation disease as well.
Once again, yeah, and that's even rarer.
So, sorry to be on a very awkwardly asking you. So some people think being a mutant, you will end up flying, and you are. And
it's got a terrible. Unfortunately, there's some terrible connotations between the words. Some of the serious words. So we have everything from retardation to mutation. What people are to always remember, those are scientific terms. I mean, the general consensus is you don't go around using the word retardation, but that is a clinical term. That's whenever it's used, obviously by me, it's then done in a clinical sense. So it's with all of these things, sometimes the language becomes difficult and can put people off. That's why I will try to make it clear to people that it doesn't matter where you are, what countries, what traditions. We've got a lovely young girl in the office, and she was asking, does it make any difference who the family are, what their bloodline is? If they're, for instance, close, are they close family? Could they be, if it's first cousin, second cousin? And it doesn't affect the syndrome at all. It's unfortunately, it has no bias. It affects everyone English, Asian, Chinese, Jamaican. It affects us all. Luckily in the UK, obviously, we've got people like us, but our third biggest amount of traffic to our website is from India, where there's even less information, and everything is on the internet then. So it's a wild west, depending on where you land. You land on our pages, so we've done lots and lots of research. We've taken as much advice as we can and put facts out there, but same with everything, it can be a bit of a wild west out there when you're trying to find out actual facts and actual information.
Indeed. Okay, let's go back to our topic and ask you, when you told me about the diagnosis, there are misdiagnosis, but then at the same time, what is the age these diagnoses happen?
So to be fair, we're looking at about after a year to 18 months of what we would call typical normal development. So everything I explained, they're called a toddler for a reason. They start toddling around, they start to try and walk. Most children end up able to walk at probably about the 18-month stage. They start to do things that you either have seen in your own children or other children, other siblings. Then you start to realise those things are starting to get affected. So they might lose skills, anything from the ability to walk, talk, or feed themselves. We say the kind of telltale signs, even before regression, are kind of odd, kind of stereotypical hand movements. So I was talking about hand wringing. It's sometimes called hand washing, tapping, mouthing. And another big flag for us is any kind of the deceleration in postnatal head growth. So in English, that's the skull not developing at the same speed as the rest of the body, which is normally a big flag to the start or the onset of something like Rett syndrome. And from there, so we have, you were asking, well, I'll read the actual definitions and be honest with you, it's 4 main criteria. So if you're listening to this, essentially, and I'll read these 4 out, and you're thinking, oh, goodness, this, I think, my son or daughter might be similar, then this is what we would say. You would then go to the hospital or the doctor. So first of all, it's partial or complete loss of acquired purposeful hand skill. So English translation is either regressing, so not being able to grip a spoon if they were able to feed themselves, or not being able to grip a crayon, or starting to literally lose the ability to hold the water bottle in their hands, or anything like that, or the milk bottle. After a while, kids like to do everything themselves, don't they? So it's losing that. So you'll have seen it happen. They start to learn it, and they unacquire it, basically. That's the first one. Partial or complete loss of acquired spoken language. So regardless of which child, they start to make sounds, and those sounds start to try and form words, and those words then try and form sentences. You'll see it regress. So if it was sentences, it then possibly goes back to words, then to grunts or sounds, then possibly the inability to even make those noises.
So when the birth happen, when the child is there, they can make those sounds, and then the regression happens.
So go back to this clinic in Manchester. I was with a family, and it was only 2 months before that they started noticing this in their daughter, and she was nearly 2 years old. And their daughter was the same. So they had next door neighbours, and they were developing the same. They were best friends. Then they started to see a gap. The next door neighbour's daughter's starting to try and balance on a tricycle, and their daughter's struggling to pull herself up off the sofa, whereas before she was jumping around on the sofa. And that was one of the triggers, and then they started to realise there was more and more. And in their case, they actually got a diagnosis extremely quickly. One of the other families who have a daughter that's in her late 40s, it took them 30 years to get an actual diagnosis, because the mother and father were so old that the daughter was in care and in a home, and the parents were in a home. So they had the beginning of a retirement home or of a retirement village, not a care home, but and because the diagnosis, the original diagnosis, what this girl was given a long time ago, no one went back and checked. So essentially she was being treated with severe autism in this case. So yeah, there's and I go back to the other things. So we've got something called gait abnormalities. That's your gait, is your step, your stride. So you start to see strange things happen with that. And go back to the stereotypical hand movement. So in most of our girls, they end up grabbing or grasping at their hands, and you start to see that, and it's not something they can control. So if you separate the hands, like we all develop some kind of habit forming behaviors. Some of them more visual than others, but in this case it's so difficult because it's go back to just staying science. The scientists believe, or people believe, that it's something that's triggered as part of that mutation in the brain to do that kind of behaviour, because it's across the spectrum, regardless of which girl. It tends to affect them with that. And those are the 4 things that you would really look out for. But as you start to see those, once again, we go back to some people it may be slower as a parent. You may be slower to admit, or I don't want anyone to think, oh, my son or daughter have not been able to pull themselves up today. They've not. This is a continuous behaviour. You would see it across all aspects. It wouldn't be just, oh, today it's happened, and tomorrow. It would gradual. And
so it is a birth defect which happens at the time of when it happens.
Yeah, about 18 months.
But it did not come in light till the child has moved on. Sometimes the child it didn't come out for 5 years. Sometimes it come out.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the most destructive thing. You have
a healthy born child which then degrade.
Yes, to in some cases severe disabilities. Crying. They're not able to walk. Most of the families have to have winches and cranes fitted inside their homes to move their children about. They have special vehicles. It affects everybody's life, because then you have to worry about carers if you want to work, or it's
Okay, in terms of the people, when I say that it is. It's a very unique thing which not many people have heard about, and then you mentioned that because like anything else. So as this is the second largest syndrome of people being disabled
in girls, yes, after,
in girls, after
Down
syndromes. So I remember when somebody's pregnant, they normally do a test to check whether the baby is normal or abnormal. So can those tests also?
So absolutely, there is one for Down syndrome, and then there's when the baby's born, there's also something called a heel prick test, isn't there? And that scans some stuff. That's kind of a difficult and contentious issue. Because of the way it would be found, there isn't. Yes, at some point that might be possible. I'll try and stay as on the fence as possible. Yes, that possibly is possible. And then you would essentially make the decisions from there.
Currently,
it's not part of what the NHS deem as something that they would do.
Okay. In terms of as any syndrome lies, whenever there are 2 things: either they are disease or they are syndromes. So syndromes normally last for life.
Yes.
And when you class something as syndrome, that means it is there for life, and all you have to do is manage that syndrome. Yep. But I heard you mention that there is a cure you guys are working on developing a cure.
It's not right. So absolutely. So if I explain this, because absolutely, what I said about people researching on the internet, the other thing, if I was a father and put myself in that position, so my 1.5-year-old daughter starts to regress, and I go in and I get the diagnosis from my clinician, and he says she's got Rett syndrome. So I go online and I start to read this. And what I read is that there was a scientist who reversed Rett syndrome in mice quite a while ago. And then I would jump on that hope that I would be able to get a cure. Now, the first thing that I would just say is how a cure manifests itself is very, very different. So when we're talking about a cure, and then I leave this as an open question, what would someone deem as a cure? What would it be? Would it be, so we go back to your question, was if it's diagnosed in the womb, and that your child has possibly or has Rett syndrome, what do you do then? So we have to take technology that's currently cutting edge, which is something like gene splicing or gene editing. It's also some places very controversial. And you could apply possibly something like that maybe, and then before the child's born. So I don't want to go into too many theoretical things, but I mentioned for instance, the skull growth. So say, for instance, you reverse that in a 4 or 6 or an 8-year-old girl, and then her brain continues to develop and her body continues to develop perfectly, but say the skull doesn't, because you don't know what the effects are. So you cured someone of the syndrome, but perhaps you haven't cured them of the ability to then increase their skull. So you've got a brain growing inside the skull. All of these things come with their own problem. But we go back to the main thing. There isn't a cure for humans at all at the moment. And the gentleman that did discover it says that it's probably not going to happen in his lifetime. So these are his words. So whilst we absolutely have hope, it'd be crazy of me not to want something like that. It's the main thing I want. I'd essentially love to not have a job one day, just be shut up shop. But you can imagine if there was a cure for the girls right now, we have people and families living 50s, 60s, sometimes 70s, will possibly be pushing 80, 90-year-olds at some point. Those people still need to live and have support, and that's what our organisation does. So we do work very closely with somebody called Reverse Rett, and they're the British arm of an American organisation also called Reverse Rett, and they are massively for the research. So you can imagine in the cancer sector, you've got cancer research, and then you've got Macmillan who do the support. We're essentially the support organisation. We're out, I'm on your radio show, trying to get the knowledge out there of this syndrome, this condition, to get those people, because what we care about is those perhaps 5 or 6 people in Luton or anywhere, any of your listeners. There may be a grandma or an auntie that's heard what I've said or reads one of our leaflets and says, do you know what? My daughter, or mention something. She's at the mosque, mention something and says, oh, I heard something the other day, not sure, but your daughter, it seems some of these symptoms, some of the things he said, she is a bit floppy. And do you remember after 2 years old, she started to, it's those things. And then she gets the diagnosis, then she engages with us. And then when the darkest times are, she's got somebody on the phone, or they've got somebody on the phone, and there's possibly people living. Well, there is. We know that there's people living with this condition that have got no support or help.
In terms of a child who was born normally, and then when they deformed, so they cannot walk. So what are they? They
symptoms? End up. Most of our girls end up with severe difficulty walking. I mentioned a lady we work with. Her daughter's currently is still able to walk.
And the body parts, do they develop as well, or do they stay?
They will develop, but as much as somebody in a wheelchair can develop without exercise. For instance, you'll have seen, without exercise, your body starts to waste away, so your bones get weaker, etc. So with that is all of those things. One thing, though, we'll keep going back to is these girls inside, they are just the same as you and I. They have just the same thoughts, urges, feelings, but they can't act or say any of those. They can't go on a date. They can't say I love you. They can't say I don't like this TV program, or I really don't like mushrooms in my food, or don't put peas in my rice. Just simple things that we all take for granted. So it's the magic of some of our communication tools and some of the things that we do across the UK. We do the breakfasts and mornings and all kinds of things. We work with the parents to teach them some standard what's called AAC communication tools, and we always tell the parents to do what's now known as presumed competence. Always assume that there's full competence there. What's the worst case scenario? Is that you do all of this work to find that your son or daughter can't speak. But when they can, which most of them can, it's something amazing, especially when you see that first ever conversation. There's not much that can there's not much that brings a tear to my eye these days with the news how it is, but something like that is just fantastic.
Okay. In terms of the resources and the families you help, so what sort of help you're providing different families to, and what sort of a response you see from them, and what sort of resources you provide to other organizations?
Yeah, so essentially I was saying our sole aim is to provide support to the people suffering from Rett syndrome. But as a periphery, as a side effect, you can imagine I have to go out there and talk about Rett syndrome because it would be unfair on the parents to fight that struggle themselves too. Or I say parents, carers, clinicians that are involved. We fight on their behalf to get people to know, because the more people know, I'm not saying we want everyone to be an expert, but if you're aware, then you can then recommend the things that needed to be recommended. For instance, nearly all of our girls can benefit from sleep monitoring. Most of our girls suffer from some kind of sleep issue, whether it's not breathing while they're sleeping, whether it's taking short, shallow breaths, which then means that they're not getting enough CO2 in. All of those things, they're all very specific things that need very specific treatments. So yes, our general knowledge combines into not what we call, I wouldn't say we're expert knowledge, but we're heading towards that. And then all of our research, we then feed back to our clinicians. So we've got clinics in Manchester, clinics in Northern Ireland, clinics in Scotland. And all of those guys, we encourage to talk to each other. Sorry, guys, the doctors, geneticists. I don't want to disrespect them. My guys is my generic term. But yeah, it's all of those people, and then they all feed back. So we're part of the European Congress. We're actually us and the other organisation. We call ourselves the Rett Disorders Alliance. We're holding the European Congress in 2021. So it's our responsibility for the whole of Europe to represent everyone, host everybody here, and have the top scientists and etc. around the world. So yeah, we try our best to keep.
Okay, as we are closely approaching towards the end of the show, I just have literally 1.5 minutes. So if I ask you to quickly summarize within the 1.5 minute about Rett syndrome, what will you say?
It's a rare genetic syndrome. It affects mainly girls. We mentioned already it's the second biggest cause of severe disability amongst females. And an organisation like ours can make a massive difference to these people. We very recently helped a lady come out of a coma. Because from the very advice I said that we give, they managed to do something, and she woke up from a coma. I mean, it's a bit of a headline, but I think it can give you some of the massive impact that we have.
Thank you so much for helping. And if I ask you to give a quick response for any of the parents who have loved you work with their kids. Yeah,
absolutely. So we're inundated with fantastic feedback. Like I said, the communication things are magic. Some of the letters that we've got in are brilliant. So.
But all these things are available on your website.
Absolutely, yes. So
perfect.
It's RET, which is RETT.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being part of the show and spreading this knowledge. I really loved it. And thank you so much for being part of our show. And that's all for today's show, my friends. We will meet again next week, and it will be Suliman Rafiq, my co-host, my other half on this radio show will be here doing a show on postnatal care, and he will be sharing some expert advice. Till next week, I'm your host, Fahad Mating, saying Assalamu Alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We stream our daily broadcast on inspirefm.org. You'll find all our daily updates on our social media at Inspire FM Luton.